a possible hypothetical suggestion. Maybe playful and whimsical, but equally as valid to anything I find coming out of the religious right. The next verse that I think is necessary for us to unpack is the verse in Romans. And this is the verse that those who are homophobic within mainline denominations are retreating towards. And that's the opening of Romans. And it is verses 24 through 28. I include 24 and 25 because it gives some of the context. Therefore God gave them up in their lust of their hearts to impurity, to the degrading of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who's blessed forever. Amen. Now these are the verses that are applied to homosexuality. For this reason God gave them up to degrading passions. The women exchanged natural intercourse for unnatural. And in the same way also the men giving up natural intercourse with women were consumed with passion for one another. Men committed shameless acts with men and received in their own persons the due penalty for their error. We have to remember that Paul grew up as a Jew in the city of Tarsus, a Hellenistic city. And certainly for many Hellenistic Jews, the issue of sexuality, and homosexuality or homoerotic relations challenged them, especially in terms of the purity codes. And I think if we go back to what I said in Leviticus 18 and 20 statements, we get a clue to what's happening here. Paul, as you remember, describes himself in Galatians as a Pharisee of Pharisees, which means that he grows up in the purity tradition of the Pharisees. Pharisees wanted to be as pure as the temple priests. What breaks the issue of purity more so than the gender confusion we find in terms of the mixing of genders? For a male to take the position, subordinate position of a female is certainly problematic because it's blending and confusing gender. Just as Paul has problems with men with long hair and women with short cropped hair, that he sees that as unnatural, as we find later in the letter to Corinthians. Paul has a problem with hairstyles and dress. He also has a problem with gender confusion. As a Pharisee, he would be loath with the idea that two women could engage in sex. In the ancient world, a woman could not be conceived of having sex with a woman outside the penetrative model. So in this context, there is a myth within the Roman world, which Paul, as an educated or semi-educated Jew in the Roman world, would be aware of. And that is the myth of the Tribides. That is a male-identified woman. When they thought in terms of a woman on top of another woman, they thought in terms of that the woman's clitoris grew to be like a penis, and therefore was able to penetrate the woman just as a male could penetrate a female. They could not conceive of same-sex women's sexuality outside that model. And certainly that is a usurping of male position. It's kind of confirmed in one of the, I believe it's the Acts of Peter. And there's a vision of hell, of women who love women, and they're condemned in it to climb a mountain and throw themselves off consistently off the cliff. Now that says, spatially, as you think about it, a woman dared to play the role of a man and therefore is being dashed down eternally for punishment. I have to say that as a scholar, it's always fun to kind of look at the images of hell within early Christianity. You have environmental hells and hells that are filled with torture. And you can pillage and kill and have light sentences in hell, but you can commit one act of sex and you get tortured grisly in the Christian hells. It says something about the fears of Christianity and its erotophobia. So when we talk about this, the next item that is focused on it is the word natural. Now I also want to point out the word nature is used again in Romans for the church being grafted onto Israel. It is paraphusein, exceeding nature, exceeding the natural. So obviously, if same-sex couples or same-sex partners are being unnatural, God is certainly being unnatural and grafting on the church onto Israel. But I want to say that the interpreters that use natural law, there's a problem there, because natural law is based on, if you look at it, it's based on what the majority dictates and conceives of being natural. It is not based on nature. For instance, in the Roman Catholic sort of theory of nature, it is the plumbing theory, the parts fit. So if the parts don't fit, it's unnatural. So Thomas Aquinas would argue that incest and rape were more natural and therefore less a sin than homosexual intercourse or oral sex or sex between lesbians, that would be certainly seen to be unnatural. When you look at it that way, you begin to question the priorities. Incest, rape as a lesser sin than consensual same-sex relations? Nonsense. Thank you for your attention.